I want to start off by saying this is a very disturbing, uncomfortable interview to watch. If you're watching this with your kids, they're 12, 10, 14 years old, this is not the one for them to watch. This is 18 and above. If later on you feel comfortable as a parent to have them watch it, do it. You're going to see every emotion in here. There was extreme tension in certain moments, tears, laughter, tension, debate. I had to bring my booker in, Tony, because some of the accusations that were made to clarify certain areas, and Tony came in here. Some of this, she shared some names she's never shared before. Two of the names that she was a sex worker for, you can't even say sex worker at 10 years old. It's human trafficking. One of them she claims, who was a powerful billionaire, you know the name, that she would go to the Bilderberg event party in Europe, and she had abusers who had sex with her at 9, 10, 11 years old, and she would come back and report these stories back to the billionaire. What that information was used for, obviously your imagination can take it to wherever you want to take it. But the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, this is not a podcast you want to sit there. I can't wait to watch this one here. But I think we have to, because with the 359,000 missing children in America as of 2022, according to the FBI, what else do we need to do? Just sit around and not talk about it? No. You know what? It's just too disturbing to watch. It's just too disturbing to watch. Someone's kid is missing. Do we not bring light to it? Do we not address it? I just feel it's our responsibility. And every once in a while, I do these because I think it's our responsibility to bring attention to it. And many of the positions that she took and claims she made, multiple were prime ministers, multiple were billionaires. These are her claims. And while we're going through it, she was pushed back on some of the claims. But I advise you to go do your own due diligence, your own research while you're going through this. At the same time, while it's not easy to talk about these types of stories, it takes a lot of courage to talk about it. I also don't want to sit there and, claim everyone's guilty. I believe innocent until proven guilty, but I believe go do your research and your own due diligence on the names that she's dropping, and that'll help you understand for yourself as well, especially if you're somebody that's interested in this specific issue as much as I am. I do think it's something that we need to bring more attention to. Having said that, enjoy this uncomfortable interview that I had with Anneka Lucas.
They wanted to control
who?
Everybody.
Did you ever meet him?
Meet him? Oh, yeah.
What was he like?
Horrendous.
Unpack it.
He loved being behind the scenes, creating this elite sex slave who was going to make him millions.
It's a $150 billion a year industry.
No. This is a global elite network with specific people in it, and they're not all friends. So there can be infighting happening as well.
Mind control training at 9 years old.
Yeah.
Why did they take you there?
A ritual.
Politically related or business?
No, celebrity.
You've never talked about this?
I've never said his name. I can't just flop these names out. I have to.
Would this be a person we would know?
Definitely, you would know the name.
Alive or dead?
I didn't think that this was going to be the kind of conversation we were going to have.
So the audience doesn't think I'm cornering you. You told Tony that you wanted to name names.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Come on, Tony. So when you told me, she said she wanted to name names that she's never named before.
All right, I'll tell you something. I was trained as a spy. That week, I was sleeping with men, and then I would go report on their weaknesses or their sexual preferences.
Is that
I'm not saying.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
Okay, so today's story will be very uncomfortable to listen to, but it's a story that we all must be willing to have the courage and the toughness to listen to. Some stories you're like, man, I have so many things going on in my life. I don't want to hear a story like this. But it's happening. In America, according to the FBI, there are 359,094 entries for missing children as of 2022. We don't hear a lot about it. When we had George Floyd incident, everything shut down. Every mainstream media talked about it. $2 billion of damages, local business owners. It had to be on all of our minds. But here's a question for you. 359,000 children missing. Tell me what's more important than talking about something like that. No one wants to talk about it. Why? It's uncomfortable. The audience doesn't want to hear the story. Come on, just leave it alone. Let's talk about politics and Trump and economy and all this other stuff. We chose to talk about it. And today's guest is a brave woman who has been talking about this for the last 11 years. Some of you may have heard her story before. Some of you may have not. There's certain things she's going to say today she's never said before. And that takes a lot of courage to take. But I'm looking forward to having this conversation with Anneka Lucas. Thank you so much for being here with us on the podcast.
My pleasure.
So I go through the story. And for a person that reads this, you think it's a movie. You don't think it's real when it says trafficked as a young child at 6 years old, sold by her own mother to Belgian pedophile ring, and you counted the number of hours you were raped that I saw, and used your words when you say this, 6 hours a week, 1,716 hours before the age of 12. I listened to that. I'm like, that is unbelievable to hear someone go through it, but that's your life. So if you don't mind, and I know this is not easy to do, if you don't mind taking a few minutes and sharing with the audience your story, and we'll take it from there.
A few minutes.
We'll be together for 2 hours, but the story.
Okay. Yes, essentially my mother was mentally ill, I guess, never diagnosed, and she was single at first, and I was abused very early on. She was married when I was 3. And then first, this couple came into our lives. The woman was the cleaning lady, and she and her husband would take me on outings when I was 5. That started, and so that went on for a whole year. I didn't like them. I never wanted to go. I had to. My mother had my brother then, and after a year, they took me. They took me to an event, and it was immediately extreme. It was in a castle. It was horrific. And my mother, I tried to tell her that bad things had happened. I didn't have the language, obviously. It was just around my 6th birthday. And my mother then took over from these pimps. She then started driving me to locations. She would receive a call. She would drive me. I found out later that she was paid. These were in Belgium. For 3 years, I was just trafficked in Belgium. And the head of that, I call it the network, in Belgium was the Minister of National Defense at the time, Paul van den Boeynants. And he used the children to get new people in, and also to give them sometimes to really, through blackmail.
You said he was the national defense. He became a 2-time prime minister later on, right?
Yeah.
So this is before he serves as a prime minister.
It might have been after also. He served twice, so yeah, I'm not sure.
Could have been before and after.
Yeah.
So at this point, when this is happening to you, you know who he is, or you don't know who he is?
No, I didn't know anybody at the moment. At that time, I didn't know who anybody was. I had no idea.
How did you learn about who they were afterwards?
In my adult life.
How, though?
Well, they were very easy to find. Most of them were very easy to find. I would just, if I remembered a name, I just started remembering people thanks to Google, really just starting to Google and finding them very easily.
Just the faces you would recognize, or what was the method?
Yeah. Looking for their positions. I would know whatever I had. I would type that in, and then usually they would come up right away. That was the surprise. That was the big surprise, really, that I had no idea that they were this prominent when I was a child.
And when this is happening to you at the time, they don't have a name. They're not coming to you with a name. You don't know who it is.
Well, I called him Polo.
Polo,
but his name is Paul. But there's other children that named him something else. So I called him Polo, and then some people I knew their first name. But yes, they're very visible. I've found out from quite a few perpetrators when they die, because then they're in the newspaper and I suddenly see their picture.
So how many of them you knew about when they were alive? You said, that's this person, that's that person, when they were alive.
Well, actually, I've recognized quite a few when they died. And that's not only, I think, because I may have remembered certain things, but I may have not remembered who they were specifically to keep myself safe in some strange way. That the healing that then followed, I just understood that it wouldn't have been safe. I wouldn't have been able to keep myself safe, if that makes sense, because the healing process is so involved, and it does. There's certain perpetrators I was very attached to emotionally. I know that may be very hard to understand and believe, but I was very attached emotionally to some of these, which were like fathers.
What was your relationship with your father like?
Well, my biological father I didn't meet until much later. I never met him.
So how old were you the first time you met him?
18. And so he didn't recognize me. And then my stepfather was the man who closed his eyes to all my mother's activities. And so my brother is his. And I think the reason my brother wasn't trafficked was maybe because he was clearly more interested in my brother. So he just really closed his eyes. But I did try to tell him, and I write that in my book, by the way. I did try to tell him, and he didn't believe me when I was a child. So my mother he was away a lot. He was a cameraman. He was traveling a lot. But when he was there, she would literally get out of their bed, and then I would be ready in my bed. And then she would let the car drive down, just let it, just without turning on the engine, just to be quiet. And then at the bottom of the driveway, she would start the motor, and she would drive me to events, and then she would pick me up around dawn. That was how it usually worked. And he was asleep in bed, and I thought later maybe he thought she was having affairs. She was doing that also, but he never wondered. And she made up stories also about what had happened to me. For example, at one point she started saying that I was a real tomboy and that I was climbing in trees, which I never did, and I was not a tomboy. But she was saying that because I was covered in bruises. And so that explained it, and then he accepted whatever she said.
When your mom is dropping you off or picking you up, the first time this happened, how was she explaining to you? Like, are you pleading and saying, Mom, please don't take me anymore to a place like this? I don't want to go there. And if you said that, what did she tell you?
Well, I think my mother's a psychopath, that she really had one victim, that was me. So I was an extension that deserved all her wrath. So I have said I wasn't going to go, and she dragged me by my hair one time. But most of the time, because I was her little helper, I was trying to please her more than anything. And then my mother was extremely sadistic.
But did you ever plead and say, Mom, please don't take me today? Please don't take me today?
I said, I once said, I'm not going.
And what did she tell you?
She dragged me by my hair. She would get very anxious before we left. But of course I was going to go. I mean, you understand, children, and you have children. So children are going to do whatever. I was doing everything to please her. I was trying. She was the person I was most attached to. So I was trying to tell myself that she loved me, because you have to know that you're loved as a child. And so I was trying to please her as much as possible. So most of the time I wasn't going to do anything against her. But there was another element, was that with my mother, because she never saw me, she just saw whatever she saw was an extension, something that just was nothing, had nothing to do with me. Because she didn't see me at all, I was receiving more reflection of things that were true about me by these pedophiles in the network, frankly, that were seeing intelligence or they were seeing beauty. And so at times it was actually more comfortable. It was better to be in the network than to be with my mother, because that constant projection of hers was very difficult to live with.
So this entire time when she's dropping you off and picking you up, you're not controlled. Like it's, you see it in the movies where the owner has you in a room upstairs and people come in and out and they handle their business and you're away from mom and dad. That's not the case. This is mom is dropping you off and coming and picking you up at dawn.
Yes, so it was different in that way, that my mother was not in the network herself, although she wanted to. She looked up to these people. She would have done anything to belong. But because I think her particular way that her mental illness showed, she was almost too enthusiastic. She would not have been able to keep the secret. So she didn't get in, but it was as if she was envious that I was. It was as if she was sending me in her stead, that she would have wanted that kind of sexual attention. That's really what she wanted all the time, the sexual attention.
How was her relationship with her mom and dad?
She was born in 1939, before the war. Her mother died when she was 5. Just after the war. And so her father, whom I did know, he was inappropriate. He did one thing to me that was inappropriate. So
her father, your
her
grandfather.
Father. So she grew up in a town in Belgium during the war, in her early years during the war, and then lost her mother at a very early age. And I can only assume that there was sexual abuse happening, because that's how she always acted. I have gone through more than 30 years of healing from sexual abuse, all kinds of sexual abuse. And so that journey of healing, which is really, what makes me aware of these things, that's, she acted like someone who was sexually abused and never understood that she was more than that. When you get as a child, there's something that happens when you're a child and you're innocent and you're the light of God and you are innocent, and your innocence is your true self. That's who you are. That's your light. And when you are sexually abused, it's like you feel that you've lost that innocence and that you can never have it back. There's the trauma of sexual abuse is such that, when trauma means you're going to hope, you wish that it was yesterday. If there's a big loss, you just want it to be the day before when this hadn't happened yet. You just want to go back. With sexual abuse, it's like they steal your light. They steal your life. They steal your innocence. And you feel that you've lost it because you're a child and you don't know that you don't deserve this because you assume that you did. And then there are children that can never get back to that light. And the network and the way that the network operates is all to keep you in the dark. And it's run by people that are not in touch with themselves on that pure level, on that level of, I am light, I am a child of God. And when that's lost, when the abuse gives this message that I have to put out sexually in order to be loved, then you get this message. Then that's how you get validated. That's how you want your attention. And my mother acted like that, like someone who had no connection to herself and who was just constantly trying to get sexual validation from all men.
So you and your mother from 6 years old till what age was it? Till
11.
11 years old. This is happening when you're saying 6 hours a week. That's the specific number you gave?
I gave that specific number, but it's an approximation. It wasn't every week. And Look, sometimes it wasn't every week, but other times I was gone for the summer of 1972. I was gone 2 months from home. I wasn't home at all.
Where were you at? You were with the traffickers?
I was with the traffickers.
And your
I was
mom wasn't there with you?
The first month, no. The first month I was in the United States, being trafficked in the United States by a powerful billionaire who was basically triaging me and training me in his homes.
Who is this?
I'm not saying who that is yet. I have to be careful what I say. I can't just flop these names out. I have to.
Would this be a person we would know?
Definitely, you would know. You would know the name.
Alive or dead?
Dead. He was, he was taking me here. I was in the United States, so I was either in his homes, 3 of his homes I spent time in, or I was in the room in the daytime sometimes, in a bedroom, or I was even at a family's near D.C. for a week, basically parked in a nice family that treated me well, probably satanic family, and that were very happy to do a favor for this man. And then I was, after that, was taken to Germany, and I was there for another month in a facility in Heidelberg for what was my mind control training. And this is 1972, and I was 9 years old.
Mind control training at 9 years old?
Yeah.
Why did they take you there?
When I met this billionaire, so in 1972, you had the Bilderberg meeting that happened in Belgium. So for that event, Paul van den Boeynants made sure that he probably did many things around there, but basically to please this powerful American that was there for the Bilderberg meeting, he staged a ritual.
And so why would they need to train you, though?
The mind control training, he had plans for me. And, all right, I can say something. He had me in his homes and everything to get me used to the life of the elite so that I would know how to eat, so that I would recognize good clothes, so that I would be comfortable in these environments. And alongside that, we went to on one of the islands on the northeastern coast of the United States and saw there, and this was a Rothschild who was there.
Rothschild?
A Rothschild, yeah.
And is this who you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm saying we were with Evelyn the Rothschild for 1 day only. And it was clear that this billionaire, who you would think is just as powerful as this Rothschild, was not as powerful in the network as he was. And he was asking for permission to make the star that he wanted to make of me. Well, he didn't want to make me into a star. He wanted to make me into an elite sex slave where I would become famous in France, and then with that role, I would attract the most powerful men in the world, and I would be able to spy on them for him and so forth.
Is that David Rockefeller?
I'm not saying. I can't say this. All right.
The only reason I say that is because I pulled up the list from 2012 attendees, and I went through all the guests on the right that says U.S. from the Bilderberg meeting.
Okay.
Rob, if you go a little bit lower and zoom in and you put U.S., right there, you'll see the names that shows. I know this is...
Just give me a minute. Well, I can't lie, but it's scary. Yeah, might as well. Okay, there you go.
You've never talked about this.
I've never said his name.
You know, you hear these stories and you wonder There's no way these people are capable of doing something like that. At what point did you know it was him?
When he died.
2017.
Yeah.
So you didn't know till 2017.
But I knew a lot, but I didn't know that it was him.
So how did you know it was him when he died in 2017? Because that was just 7 years ago.
Immediately. I knew immediately. I just saw his face. And first of all, I saw his face, and then immediately a lot of other memories came back with him.
How much time did you spend with him?
Well, I spent quite a lot of time with him in the beginning. So from 72 to 73, this training. So I spent quite a lot of time with him in the U.S. in that first month, in July of 1972, and spent time in his estate in Westchester, and also in his home in New York City, and also in his home in Maine. And on the way to Maine, on his sailboat, we stopped off at Rothschild, who had to give his permission for the persona that he wanted to make out of me. And then Rothschild invited me into the family. And I gave I had not been treated very well up until then. So suddenly I get a very nice invitation. I feel, even this training, even though there was a lot of sex training also, just let's not make any mistakes here. This is not like I was just suddenly being treated really well. I was being trained sexually as well. But it was the best I'd ever seen in my life at age 9. And when I was invited,
Meaning treatment of elites like lifestyle, wealth? Is that what you mean by treatment?
No, in the first 3 years in the network by Paul van den Boeynants, I was treated like absolute piece of dirt.
What does that mean?
I was the lowest of the low. He always treated me like, he wasn't worth the time for him to even have a chewing gum on his soul or something, and he just had to pull it off and just resented having to spend any time on me. But he was selling me all over, or whatever he was doing. He was using me for blackmail for people that were supposedly new, or he was giving me to depraved aristocrats. But he didn't want to, I was treated, most of the time I was treated like I was absolute piece of dirt, like I had no value at all.
Did he himself sexually abuse you or no, Paul?
He beat me up.
But not sexually abused you? I
did not get sexually abused by him. He was extremely sadistic. So he did not sexually abuse me. He abused other children, though. And I don't remember being sexually abused by him. But he and a few others that were in charge there just really would treat me like the lowest of the low. So I was used to sort of knowing that it was them, it was their fault. I knew that they treated me that way, but I know that I'm human. So I didn't really fully take it seriously. And I was kind of playing the game to survive, playing this game of whatever they needed me to do. I was doing it. And then in 1972, suddenly 3 years later, I got, treated as very special. And this treatment had a lot to do with the excitement that David Rockefeller felt over the fact that he loved being behind the scenes, creating this slave, this elite sex slave, who was going to make him millions. And I was already sold in the first year. In that year, till I gave my will to the Rothschild. And he asked specifically, will you be part of the family? And I said yes. And he asked me to say, I will give my will. And a year later, I did not give my will anymore. And that's why I'm here.
Why would Rockefeller do that if he's got billions at the time? That's a very powerful family.
He was a pedophile, first of all. And these families...
Rothschild and David, or more David?
The Rothschild, I don't think, was a pedophile.
But David...
He was more powerful, but he was not a pedophile. David Rockefeller was a pedophile. There's a lot of survivors. I work with survivors. There are a lot of survivors out there of David Rockefeller. But I saw him in a certain light, and I've met one other person. Now that we named David Rockefeller, I can tell you that the place where I was taken in Germany, in Heidelberg, the doctor that was in charge there, Hans Harmsen, I have met another survivor that was also a special project of David Rockefeller. And Hans Harmsen, who was the doctor in charge there, she was there too as a special project of him. And she also came across Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen?
Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen.
Yes. There you go. There you go.
And who was he?
I think that he was in charge of the special project of David Rockefeller for the mind control training. And I know one other survivor who went through similar experiences as myself later on.
Did you ever meet him?
Meet him? Oh, yeah.
What was he like?
Horrendous.
Unpack it.
Okay. The way that you're trained in mind control training, it's based on torture. What I was used to doing as a child sex slave was to please men in some way or other, to get on their wavelength so that they wouldn't harm me, so that I could survive. With him, I never got anywhere. I never got through it at all. Most of these pedophiles you could get through in some way. There's some way in which, I could sense intuitively what I needed to do to please them. So with him, there was nothing that I could do to get through to him. He was just completely mean and vicious. And one thing that he would do is I was forced to watch certain things to learn about men's behavior, whether it was, it was their weakness or their sexual preferences or their sexual
desires,
perversions, their sexual perversions. So we're not talking about regular sexual, we're talking about sexual perversions, to recognize those. And so I was forced to watch the films. And first I would see the man in the behavior, just his face, and then seeing him in the behavior, different things. And then I would need to guess based on a face what this person would do. And if I got it wrong, one thing that he did is he would just strangle me until I fainted. And in the fainting...
He would?
Yeah, he would, yeah. And in the fainting, he liked to strangle. And in the fainting, I would realize after a while that in these near-death experiences that my intuition was sharpening. And so it was punishment for not giving the right answer, but it was also part of the training to be able to get more intuitive and sense things without having to use your reason. And one thing he did was he would strangle me, but first he would say, "Was bedeutet das? What does this mean?" And he would point at his own face, and then he would strangle me. And so his face to me means being strangled, or it did. That's how the programmation worked. So when I actually came across his photo, I felt like I was dying. And it took a long time. And I do a lot of yoga and meditation, and I had to really just go into the breathing and really, really just work through that programmation that seeing his face means you're going to die from strangulation. You're going to asphyxiate.
He wanted you to know that.
That is how programmation works in the network. That you know it, and your body has a reaction. And also, it is a way to get you from A to whatever they need you to go. So if this prompt means that, and that was in Heidelberg. He wasn't there all the time. Most of the time, there were 3 handlers that were doing this.
So if you go back to that, Rob, that says right there, he was a bureaucrat in the Nazi Germany. He was responsible for approving eugenic sterilization performed on the disabled. He supported forced sterilization of the mentally handicapped and helped to carry them out to Protestant intermission institutions for which he was responsible.
David Rockefeller also was a eugenicist.
So when you're with David Rockefeller, are you in their estate? Are you in their house? Are you around their family? And if you are,
Not around their family, no. But I was around, I was in 3 of his estates, as I said, and I was around his staff.
Did their staff know what was going on with you or no?
I was in bed with him. And they acted like nothing was happening.
You were in bed with them.
And the staff knew and was there, and they were just acting like that was all normal. I went shopping on Madison Avenue with him. He bought me some dresses and some clothes. And everybody, you can imagine, everybody's so happy to see him, so happy to serve him.
You don't think they're going to think it's weird that a young girl is with a very powerful billionaire?
I don't think today people would think that was weird because there's such a great desire to please those people. But this is 1972. Nobody thought anything. I could have been taken anywhere out in the open. A lot of it was out in the open, and nobody would have thought a single thing. These people were just so happy to serve him. He told his staff that I was his niece from Paris. Who cares?
While they're seeing you in bed with them.
Well, he didn't say it then, but they did see it. But they acted like nothing was happening. I don't know if they were also controlled or if they were the right kind of personality. I don't know. But I saw a woman and a butler, a woman and a man. Only those 2, and that was in the house in New York.
How did they treat you?
Very nice.
They were good to you?
Very.
How was he to you?
Well, most of the time he had this excitement. So a pedophile gets excited around children. And so there's a way in which they can start to feel alive when they're with children because it's their own little child that maybe is dead inside of them that's sort of starting to come to life because they relate to children in that way. They see they're trying to revive their own deadness, which dead from abuse or whatever it is. They're trying to revive something. So they're seeing children at a certain age, usually the age that they were abused. And he was excited. And he was excited not only of being around me. And of course, a child is also not somebody who's going to point out your flaws, yeah, right? A real partner will point to your flaws. And he had a slave who was already a child slave, who was, thinking the world of him, and that made him feel really good. So he was excited. And he was also excited at the idea of what he was making me into, because this persona that he was creating, that I was supposed to be a French singer, actress, and he was excited to be the secret man owner behind that persona. And I was sold during that year already, when I was still supposedly in training to become that persona. I was already probably sold. I mean, I was given to a German chancellor at the time. And that was Kurt Kiesinger, who I was driven to Germany. So the Belgians were the Belgian handlers would drive me to Germany, and then I would spend time with Kurt Kiesinger, who would take me to like little hotels. And again, no questions asked. Yeah, him. Yeah.
Before he became chancellor, he served as a minister president of 1958-66, President of Federal Council, 1960. He was a chairman of Christian Democratic Union from 67 to 71. And David introduced you to him? How did
Nobody
you meet
introduced me. I was just taken there.
You were just taken there.
Child sex slave is not introduced. It doesn't happen that way. But the Belgian handlers would take me. They would drop me off on the side of the road. And then he would pick me up. And then I would get in a car with him. And then he would drive me. And then we would arrive. And again, I was trained, so I knew how not to draw attention to myself. But also, he taught me to speak German. He was very enamored. And he might have been paying.
So I'm looking at this, when we're looking at some research. Common methods used by traffickers. False promises. Yeah. Offering employment, education, or romantic relationships. 2, isolation.
This is different.
Separating victims from family and friends to increase dependency.
Different.
3, threats and violence. Using physical harm or threats against the victim or their loved ones.
For sure.
4, debt bondage. Creating a sense of indebtedness that the victim feels obligated to repay. Psychological manipulation. Employing tactics like gaslighting to control the victim's perception of reality.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but you see, when you're talking about the network, which I again, you have David Rockefeller, you have the Rothschilds, you have the Belgians who are, connecting to that network. We're talking about a global network of people, of a combination of psychopaths and pedophile and, far gone pedophiles that are Satanists. And they sell their soul to Satan. And they want control. They have the resources. A lot of the children that are born into these families are abused from the beginning and are mind controlled as well. They are also tortured. Because what they do, other than the sort of like normal kind of trafficking, is that you get in, and either you are what I was in the beginning, like your life means nothing and you could be killed anytime. That was the first 3 years. But then once he took notice of me, and which was in a very strange circumstance.
He is who?
He is David Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm.
Once he took notice of me, and he was going to then use me for his purposes, then I would have been part of what I call the global network, where I would have been completely controlled as a star. That's where the mind control comes in. And then, using my natural talents and abilities and blood to create a person that is completely in their control, while they have been created the same way, and all these people are crazy. That is, this is everything goes into the PR of presenting an image that is really acceptable. And then everything goes into the PR of, it's not as if David Rockefeller didn't have access to the press. So what these people who are part of this murderous network, they use their resources to control their image. And that is, of course, that someone like me should never have too much reach. And what we don't understand is that it is one network. And of course, if they're friends, they're connected a lot through blackmail. Because the Satanists, there's what I call sincere Satanists who really sell their soul to Satan, and they have rituals, and there are sacrifices being made. And then there are those that just want to belong to the club of power. And, and then it depends. In the network in Belgium, well, it depends if someone gets sucked in. You have your integrity and you have your ideals, and you start out, and then what happens? If you get into that club, you will be asked to make choices, and either it's power and you stay with the club, or it's your integrity means that you cannot do this anymore. You cannot lie. In the beginning, it's to just be quiet about what you see. having to do with sexual abuse usually. And then as it goes on, it becomes, you get involved, you're participating. And of course, it's not everybody that is going to be manipulable as a pedophile, because not everybody is going to rape a child. But those who don't, they know, and they keep quiet about it. So that's how it works. And
how long were you with David Rockefeller? 1 month? Or did you see him again after that?
I did see him again after that. I saw him again after the training, and I saw him again, especially a year later in April. I saw him.
73 or 70, 72?
73 now.
Okay.
April of 73. I saw him in Italy. And that's where I saw the most people that I recognized later. There were actually a lot of singers there. There were a lot of people that were in the entertainment industry, and this was my coming out. I was singing. I performed several songs. So there was some Jacques Brel songs because he's Belgian,
Jacques
like
Brel
myself.
song, really, like Ne me quitte
Ne me
pas,
quitte
or-
pas.
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I sang.
yeah.
Yeah, Ne me quitte pas. And then
Un saut oublié tout. It's a beautiful, amazing song.
It's a beautiful
he's one of my
song.
favorite. And by the way, that song was sang by, I think, Julio Iglesias, I think Sting. They converted it in English. The meaning of the song is actually very interesting. The first time he sang that song on TV, he died at a very young age.
he died rather young,
yeah.
but he was alive then, and it was a popular song.
Was
and
he there at the event or no?
No, no.
Okay.
I never saw Jacques Brel, but I was singing the song, and what I had been trained by a famous French composer, singer, and he had showed me the choreography. Now, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but this choreography, I was sexualizing every line of that song. So you have the line, for example, I remember Le vieux volcan. There's a line about the old volcano that nevertheless still spouts fire. And for that, I remember I had to go sit on an old man's lap and I had to look down on his genitals because that's the old volcano that spouts fire, that still spouts fire.
In front of everybody?
That was the audience, yeah. And this is an audience of people that were in the sphere of Rockefeller, obviously, but this is like a satanic gathering. I mean, these were people that were in this club, and for whatever reason they wanted to be there, whether it was for fame or whatever,
When you're doing that, are they laughing or are they just like, oh, it's this great performance? What's
laughing.
the reaction?
No, laughing.
They're
Everybody
laughing.
laughs at the sex jokes of the 9-year-old. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're 9 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And who's there? Some of the names that you're saying. Who's there at this
Well,
party?
I know you really want to hear names, and I really don't like to focus so much on the names, but Eddie Arnold was an American perpetrator that was there. And Eddie Arnold was, yeah. So Eddie Arnold was somebody who really, really, really wanted to belong to the club. And I don't know how people got in there. Some of them are coming in through masonry. Some of them are coming in other ways because they get famous and then they get lured in. But he just really wanted to belong.
Now, when you say belong to the club, meaning just to be there.
Power.
But was he?
It's power.
But not abusing kids. You're not.
No, he abused me. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he abused me. That week, so there was an entire week, and I was basically given to a lot of men there. Meanwhile, horrible things were happening.
Songs.
Yeah. Meanwhile, lots of horrible things were happening. There were rituals happening. It was like the only thing I can compare it to is maybe like I think of a Dionysian orgy. Have you ever read the books of Mary Renaud? Mary Renaud? Okay. She has described once, and I don't even remember which book, but she described a Dionysian orgy, and it was like I was back there. It goes on for days and days. And
But you see, if I look online, there's literally nothing online about accusations about Eddie Arnold.
can you say? You're not going to probably... I know a lot of survivors of David Rockefeller, but I don't think you're going to find any accusation online about David Rockefeller. It's all about cover-up. It was very, very good. All the investment, all the money goes... I mean, not all the money, but it goes a lot to the image.
You gave a couple other names to me earlier. I don't want to say it until you're comfortable. One of the names was another famous politician from the West.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
He was also there that week.
He was also there that week.
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau.
And what was the interaction with you?
Scary.
Was his wife also involved or just him?
I didn't see his wife, or I don't know. I didn't see anybody else but him.
But you vividly remember him. And when did you know it was him later on? Because at the time you're 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, again, this came much, much later. I don't remember exactly when I realized that it was him.
You don't remember when he came to you later that it was Pierre?
No.
Justin Trudeau's father, right? That's
yes.
who you're talking about.
Yes.
And I mean, you've never mentioned his name before, right? No. Trudeau. What was that relationship like, or the experience like? Was it a one-day thing? Was it a repetitive that happened? All
right, I'll tell you something. David Rockefeller had me trained as a spy. So I was a sex slave, of course, and I was an elite sex slave now. And I was trained as a spy through the mind control training. And so that week, I was sleeping with men, and then I would go report on their weaknesses or their sexual preferences to David Rockefeller.
Why did he need that information? Is that how to blackmail and use it later on in negotiation?
For example. Or if he knows what they want, then he can give it to them sexually. So about Trudeau, I said that I could never please him as long as I was alive. That's how scary that was.
You could never please him?
If I was alive.
With Trudeau?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means that he couldn't kill me because at that point I was not a throwaway child. And he scared me enough so that I then tell Rockefeller that that's what he wants, a child to kill. Then you understand that the next time he can, if he wants to use that, he can use it. He can use that information.
Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm.
So how many of these celebrities did abuse you during that specific event that you were at for you to come back and report to David?
Oh, God, I don't even remember. I was very busy. And at that time, and, I want to specify that when I was in Belgium, I always had a distance from the perpetrators, and I always knew that they were wrong and that I, was a human being, and that they, even though they treated me like nothing, that I actually, wasn't worth being treated that way. I knew that. When I was mind control trained, which is based on science, it's horrendous science from, probably related to some of the experiments that were done in the camps. And I know it's extremely, when I went into the mind control training, there was no guessing, there was no experimentation. It was just done very precisely to get the result that they wanted, so that I'm a high-functioning machine for their purposes. And I did not at that time have the distance to understand that I didn't want that anymore. I thought now, at age 9, I believed that I was this persona and that I was doing this. I wouldn't have called it abuse. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, you become immune to it. It's like a mobster that kills somebody so many times. If you watch an interview with Richard Kuklinski, I think Richard, what's his last name, Rob? I think I'm saying it right. Iceman. And you see him in interviews when he's killing people. It's no longer a...
well, that's the network. In the network this happens.
Right,
And, when you go to any gang, you have
Right.
these little kids that get pulled in, and
Right.
it's either kill or die.
Sure.
And then, so they get pulled in that way. And it's the same in the network, with violence and pedophilia.
Mm-hmm. But let me stay on this with you here. So you then gave me a name. You said a woman. You didn't give me a name. You said a woman who would be seen as very innocent, because most of the time when we're thinking about this, you're thinking about man. Was this woman also at the same event?
Yes.
She would have to be in her 80s and 90s today.
Mm-hmm.
Politically related or business?
No, celebrity. Celebrity that I told you no one would believe. No one would believe it.
What? And this was in 73. That's 51 years, no, 70, 51 years ago.
Yeah.
That nobody would believe.
Nobody would believe today. No.
And what was...
Such an icon. This is it. We all have icons, right? We all have people that we look up to. And every icon that I had, personally, people I never saw in the network, because I was only there for 5 years, you have to understand. That's a short time. I worked with people that were in much longer, that were born into it, that were in much longer. Every icon that I've had, almost every icon, I have had to let go of. Because I found out from somebody that I'm working with, completely private healing work that we do together. I really would wish that we could talk more about the healing, because I feel like, I feel like we're talking a lot about names, and the healing is so important. That is, I think, the reason that I can speak is because I've healed so much, and I understand things that most people don't understand. And I like to speak about those things, like how that really works and everything in the mind, because I was being trained to become like them. And then I chose not to.
Yeah, I mean, it's and by the way, I want to speak about that as well. And also your book, as we're going through this, just trying to sit here and, you and I were talking, right? Where it's like most people don't want to talk about it. Everybody you've mentioned so far, I had a guy I did an interview with, and he started telling me all these weird stories. And I want to believe all the stories he's telling me, because some of it is actual word when we use unbelievable. And the stories would get more and more and more exaggerated. But there was one pattern. Everybody he ever said anything about, they were all dead. So they couldn't defend the story, right? They couldn't
I don't just go and tell stories, first of all. I mean, it's taken me most of my adult life to even be ready to speak. The Dutroux case happened in 1996. I was encouraged to speak up then, in 1998, when survivors of the same network that's in Belgium started to speak out. The Dutroux case took 8 years to go to trial. And then they were left with Marc Dutroux, his wife, and 2 others. Michel Nihoul was one of the defendants. Michel Nihoul I saw in the network. He was there then too. I was not going to speak out. I was not ready. I was afraid. I was afraid to speak out, and also I knew that I wasn't ready. It's not something you want to talk about, first of all. I am a really good writer. I really wish that I could have written stories that would be interesting and well-written, and it would be appreciated, and I would be appreciated as a writer. I don't want to be talking about this stuff. I've accepted it because it feels that the divine has wanted me here and with this and talking about it, and I am. But it's not, I'm not here for my ego. It is, I get attacked a lot. I have to deal with a lot of stuff. I have to deal with a lot of miscomprehension, but also attacks. My book, supposed to come out in France more than a month ago, it's been blocked. This translation of my book, it's been blocked. The publisher has not been in contact with me at all. I know that he received at least one mail that was to discredit me, and I've probably received a lot more by now. But anyway, things happen all the time to stop me from speaking out. I'm not just telling stories. I've been so careful to wait until I was ready to say anything at all, because I knew that if I'm going to get attacked and I'm going to go under, or if I'm going to get the love from people, I'm not going to be able to handle it. I'm going to, need it. And I can't need power when I'm going to speak about these things. You understand?
I don't think there's anything about power here. I believe this happens. I believe this happens all the time. And I believe it was way more back in the days till today, because back in the days, and by the way, today, it's still happening today. You see movies like Sound of Freedom. You see movies like Liam Neeson, Taken 2, Taken 3. Why do movies do so well? And, Belgium is known for a lot of things. Europe, there's some of these countries are known for a lot of things. But to me, it's more... It's
a worldwide, it's a global...
Right. It's a $150 billion a year industry. I mean,
No. This is a global elite network with specific people in it, and they're not all friends. So there can be infighting happening as well. But it is, and when I think of politics, it's like manipulated division. There's so much manipulation, and it's all manipulated to keep people fighting each other, so that will not look at the imposed division that is really between the top and the bottom. And when you start looking at the top, this is happening now.
Who is the top?
Well, isn't Rockefeller the top? Isn't Rothschild the top? Aren't those people the ones at the top? No. So I'm taking all the risks speaking about it. I don't want to say anything. I actually don't even like to say the names, because the truth is, it's not out of loyalty. It's rather that what is right to say when. Yes, saying names eventually is important because I was there. It's my story. I should be able to say who it was.
What do you think about Jane Fonda and Julie Andrews? What do you think about them?
What do I think of people like that as potentially just like what I was going to be, you see.
Got it. Potentially what I was going to be.
Yes, I was supposed to be a celebrity in France. So I was going to be singing, and I was trained as the sexy, the sexual animal. So that's what was being sold. So that's how these powerful men would then fall for me. And then I could maybe marry a president, that's possible. Whatever it was, but it was really Rockefeller who was behind it.
Okay. So when you're spending time with Rockefeller, you said you didn't know it was him until he died in 2017.
Yeah.
How is that possible? If you're going to these events and these parties and they're mentioning his name, don't they say David Rockefeller?
But the name, I never heard the name. I knew him as David.
So they wouldn't say, please help me bring up the, great David Rockefeller.
If people I saw his face, I probably would have seen it, because the thing is, I would have not done well if I'd remembered him while I was alive, because he got so deep. You understand? I was a child sex slave. I had not known any love, and this was the best I got at that time.
Right.
And because of that, I would have there's a lot of parts in me that were very attached to him, that loved him very much. It's part of the reason also why I wouldn't want to necessarily say the name. It feels like disloyal somewhere too, believe it or not.
To who, though?
To him, because there's still parts inside of me that are also attached to him. And of course, I've learned a lot. The more I heal, you see, you're talking like somebody who doesn't understand healing very well, because the healing comes from, how is it possible? It's very possible that I had vague memories of an American and some positive connection to that. But then there was also the memory of how I had met him, which was horrific. And I'd grieved for that. And I in the 90s, I was crying over that situation. And I haven't necessarily, healed completely. But at the moment, what it is that something begins to manifest, and usually through the body, because our trauma is stuck in the body. And then usually there's a period of, sometimes it's just boom. When he died, it was immediate, and I immediately got the memories, and there was no question. But in the time that the memories come, and this is, mind control is about dissociation. It's you get traumatized. Why? Because it dissociates you, and then you don't know what your other half is doing. So when we're talking about somebody who has an amazing front, when they're in their front persona, they don't know what they do in their shadow. That's in the shadow. So the mind control is to create dissociation, to create parts that will go, alters, that will go and do things, specific things. And that, of course, that stays. When you're an adult, you're dissociated. So you don't remember most of it or nothing. And it just comes back little by little. It's a very long and arduous process, and it requires tremendous courage to begin to open up to the possibility, because the first thing that comes, when I had the first flashback of this, I was like, no. First of all, I thought, if that's true, I'm going to kill myself, which was also programmed into me. But I struggled so hard with this is not true. This is not who I am. I have an idea of myself. Okay, it doesn't work very well, this identification as me in this family. And things aren't really adding up. And at the same time, I never want this to be true. It's impossible. And without the Dutroux case, I had no context either, but I was getting the flashbacks one after the other. The therapist I was with didn't want to know it. She wasn't ready. She didn't want to hear it. She dismissed it. Some things I didn't even bring to her because I knew she wasn't going to be open to it. So so first there was the Dutroux case, when I suddenly realized that all my flashbacks suddenly made sense. And then when things start to make sense, then suddenly a bunch of other things start to make sense as well. Like, for example, behaviors of mine, or what I call cover memories. There are certain things that I know, and I've always known them, and I may have put them in a certain context, but suddenly, if this is true, if this, what I'm pulling out of the shadows here, if that is true, then that also makes sense. And so it becomes a personal investigation into these memories.
Where do you live right now? In the state? Not state.
In New York.
You live in New York. And how long have you been in the States?
Since 1985.
And you don't know who David Rockefeller is till the day he died in 2017 in New York? The Rockefeller Center? The Rockefeller this?
I told you I never heard the name Rockefeller.
You can't, that's not possible.
Yes, of course it's possible. I'm a child sex slave. Why would I hear the name Rockefeller? Who says it? Nobody told me. Nobody said it. He didn't say it. He was David to me. Now, I heard the name Rockefeller as an adult. Of course, there's songs about the Rockefellers, but that didn't mean anything. That name didn't ring a bell to me.
Yeah, but I mean, he's everywhere. His picture, you would see it, so it's not...
I didn't think that this was going to be the kind of conversation we were going to have. Frankly.
Well, I never know what kind of a conversation I'm going to have. I simply go into a conversation...
I feel like I'm combative almost, because I feel like...
No, to me, it's not that. To me, the main thing is the following. I think this is a very serious issue. I think it's such a serious issue that in America, I'm disappointed with our politicians that they don't spend enough time talking about this, nor does the mainstream media. And we've covered stories like this God knows how many times. 359,000 missing children in 2022, according to the FBI. Never once do you hear these guys get up there and campaign and talk about this kind of stuff. It's just we're talking about all the other stuff.
We had Dennis Hastert, who was the Speaker of the House, who was actually jailed for pedophilia.
If what you're saying is true, you're saying your loyalty is to Rockefeller.
I'm not saying that. Obviously, I'm speaking about it, and I've been speaking about it. Right. My loyalty is obviously not with the abusers. It never was. It was in a very controlled situation. I was being prepared as a child to become part of them. I said no at age 10. Now that is something that Some children do, but most don't. Most don't have the strength to do that. So no, my loyalty is essentially not with Rockefeller, and it's not with any of those people. That's why I'm talking about it.
You said that. You said, I feel like a certain
yes,
level
because
of...
a part of me is
I'm
still
repeating
attached.
what you're saying. I'm not
it's
saying
like
what I said.
If people talk
your
about
words.
your parents a certain way, maybe at some point, no matter what the reality, maybe at some point you're going to feel some emotional strings there.
Yeah, but you're very comfortable not talking positively about your mom, but you're not very comfortable talking negatively
My
about
mother never
Rockefeller.
gave me as much as he did, and that just happens to be the truth. He gave me reflections that I never received before.
Did you ever reconnect with your mom or no?
I forgave her before she died.
Did you ever reconnect with her?
I forgave her before she died. I called her to forgive her before she died.
When you called her, how much longer after she died did she die?
A year after.
Did you guys ever spend time together again or no?
No, I did offer to come to see her when she was dying.
So how old were you the last time you saw your mom?
I don't remember, but it's a long time ago.
12 years old, 14 years old, 18 years old, 22 years old?
No. I was an adult. I was in touch with her as an adult. And as these memories were coming back and I was working on these things little by little, it became clear that she was still the same person, that it's just like there's this idea of what my mother was, which is what I needed to live with as a child to believe, to survive. And then there's the reality. And when the reality became clear, she was acting just exactly the same as she would have. She never changed. And really, there was no reflection there that I would have needed to emotionally grow. It was all false. It was all a projection. It had nothing to do with who I am. I was like, she needed me to be bland, either good and bland and ugly, or evil and powerful. And the David Rockefeller saw, even Paul van den Boeynants saw things in me that my mother never did. He recognized things that were actually intricately mine. So for my emotional growth, I needed.
You ever seen the movie Red Sparrow?
No, I don't need to see those movies because there's a lot of movies and they take like little aspects of what happens in the network. Yeah.
Oh, I fully believe the network exists. I am not from the school of thought that this doesn't exist. This is a real thing. I have a lot of friends in this space who are former CIA guys, Delta guys, military guys that, it's as real as it gets. It is happening. The only reason I asked this question from you is one of the recent stories that was, all over the news in America is over Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right. When
you hear the types of stories where billionaires give him $151 million of consulting fee, I was like, well, who the hell gives who $151 million? Oh, he will help me on my taxes. That much? Maybe $1 million? Maybe $500,000? I don't know anybody that gets paid $158 million of consulting fee. Leon Black gives to Jeffrey Epstein. It's kind of weird, right? When people ask, that's the amount of money I give.
That's very, I take that for granted. What people don't know is that I work with survivors again, and several survivors, younger survivors that I know were trained by him. And so...
Who? Jeffrey
Epstein.
Okay. Yep.
He was a programmer.
I thought you were talking David. That's why I'm asking.
Excuse me. Yeah. No, Jeffrey Epstein. Uh-huh. And they were trained by him, some from when they were babies. So just the story that's out there now is that, the teens and everything. And then we talk about, the abuse of teens, but really he was training children of all ages.
Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him or Ghislaine?
No.
Never met him, even in New York?
No, I was out. In 1974, I was out.
Right.
Yeah.
And what did you do after you got out? What jobs did you do? When you came to New York, what were you doing in the 80s, 85?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about how I got out, because normally you don't get out.
Okay. Tell us. How did you get out?
Look, first, the week that I was telling you in Italy, it was in Italy nearby Lake Como, so where I was sleeping with all these men and where these horrific things were happening.
Men and women, I think you said to me.
There were
right?
men and women, absolutely, but I was sleeping with the men. I was not trained to be with women. I was only trained as a sex slave for men. Mm-hmm. And these horrible things were happening all week. And the end of the week, and this is April 30 is an important day for the Satanists. I'm not exactly sure why, but by the end of the week, I was going to have my big, I had already had the singing, you know, I'd already had the performance for everybody there. And then I was going to have the ritual that was how I was going to be part of them. Another I will, perhaps, you know, you have to say I will. So you have to give your will to the network, to Satan. And so this was going to be my big entry. And I knew better. I didn't want to do. I knew I didn't want to. I didn't want to pay that price. I didn't want to pay the price that it would take to be part of it. And so I did everything that I needed to do because I had been trained in a way that I knew not to say no. But after that, the next time I saw David Rockefeller, I rebelled. And then I was immediately tortured. I was thrown in a cage, in a dungeon, and tortured for several days.
By him?
No, he never touched. He was always kept. He watched, and he was there for some of it. He was verbally telling me that I was absolutely worthless. But Hans Harmsen came too. And
excuse me.
No. And basically, I was retrained for several days to make sure, you know, that I would feel the lowest of the low, and that I was absolutely worthless. And anyway,
he's telling you this.
He told me that for sure, but also I was also tortured. And so he wasn't always there. He was there a few times, but he wasn't. And at the end of that couple of days, I was basically thrown back into the Belgian network, where I was used another year. And then my book actually speaks about the year after I've already been rejected from what I call the inner circle afterwards. And I ended up, there's this gangster that took an interest in me, and a year later, that became an extremely violent, vicious relationship. I'm 10, he's 20, and a year later he rescued me. And I had a near-death experience, so you could say that I didn't survive. I had an extremely big near-death experience. I wasn't supposed to survive, but I had to come back, and it was a very beautiful experience. Also, my book is called Quest for Love. I was in these pedophilic relationships and everything, looking for love in the midst of hell. But what happened in that near-death experience was, and it was, I was always, spirit was often present with me, and there were, like when I talk about these things, yes, I was tortured for days, you know, and this is true. So when you look at that from the outside, it is just gruesome and there's nothing else there. But spiritually, I felt often that there was help. Sometimes no, sometimes yes, but there was help. There was support. There was, sometimes there was an insight that would come. Often I felt this benign presence. And when I had the near-death experience, it was a very glorious experience. And I felt finally this incredible love.
Do you believe in God?
Of course. I mean, that's everything. There is nothing with that.
Who's God to you? Are you a Christian?
It's not a
Are you a how would you define that? My teacher who showed up in the near-death experience was Paramahansa Yogananda. Now,
Paramahansa Yogananda started a autobiography of a yogi. Yeah. If you want to show, there you go. That orange book. There you go. That's Paramahansa Yogananda. So Paramahansa Yogananda wrote, one of the gurus of the path is Christ. And so it is not separate from Christianity. The teachings are the original Christianity combined with the original yoga, which has nothing to do with the physical yoga, but the meditation. So you have, the prayer, which is like speaking to God, and then the meditation, which I could call listening to God. And there's these specific meditation techniques that bring your energy back into your spine and brain that are meant to help you to what happened, in the near-death experience is you transcend the physical, you leave the body, but because you are not the body, you are consciousness, pure consciousness. And then in that experience, I experienced the expansion of the heart where I just felt that divine love. Mm. And then had these insights also then to help me know what to strive for when I was healing. And that is to go back, to return to the love of Christ. And that is why my message has so much to do with ending the division between people, between us, not judging other people, respecting everybody, getting along, but to look, because I feel that this division is created from this network.
You
very
think the
specifically,
network should be held accountable?
Of course, and the people in it. And that the division is caused from that place of these people that want to maintain the control specifically so that we won't look at them and that we won't look at this.
Do you think they still exist?
What has happened to make it stop existing? Nothing.
Right. What do you think you can do to help it? Because
what am I doing?
You're somebody talking about it. Is that kind of how you process that?
Everything I do is to help it. I heal. I work with other people that have been through it. So the fact that I have had my 30 plus years of healing behind me, I can really, when someone has been through something like that, it is very common that you cannot believe it. So when someone who's been through it and has been through the healing, who knows exactly what it is and can bring context to what is coming up, because it makes no sense, these things, when they come up. That is what I do. And I write. And I think of myself as a writer. So I try to reach people. It is not about the sensation. It is not about the names. Of course, yes, they have to be held accountable eventually, all of them, absolutely. I do trust in spiritual justice, though, not necessarily justice on earth. Most of these people died in their bed. They were never held accountable in life. But to me, my role is speaking up. The revelation of this truth, which is a dark truth that I think we should know about. And the second part of my mission, I think, has to do with the healing. I developed a psychological healing modality, and it's for everyone. It is to look at power dynamics in the way that we all, project power. Like if I look up to you, then I'm going to come from a place of below. And that projection, it is used as an entry into our own unresolved stuff. Like if I put you up, then you are an authority figure to me. And that means that I'm coming from a child place and I'm putting you in the position of a parent. And beneath that upward projection, putting someone on a pedestal, is fear. And so we go in that way to look at healing or whatever it is, unmet emotional needs, or and vice versa. When we look down on someone, when we judge someone, to first look at ourselves. Like, what is this in me? Why do I need to feel powerful in that moment? Why do I need to think less of that person? So it's not judging in terms of just saying what it is. Like, I don't mean, a pedophile is a pedophile. That's not what I mean judging, that there's judgment there. That is just what it is discriminating or discerning. But I'm talking about an emotional charge, which is exactly what I feel the network is using to create that division, to keep judging each other and to keep thinking that it's other people like us.
To me, I understand that, but, I tweeted something out earlier today because of what happened with Laken Riley. And we were watching a video of Laken Riley's family. And I don't know if you're following the story of Laken Riley.
No.
Young, beautiful of a human being, beautiful spirit, is going for a run at night while a Venezuelan gangster is looking for her. And she comes, not looking for her, just looking for a girl. And she sees her running, he sees her running, and he catches her wanting to rape her. And he starts hitting her with a rock over the head. And she's recording this while she's calling the cops. She's trying to escape. And her family, her stepfather, read a letter she wrote to her future husband, which is the most incredible story when you read this. It's tough to watch it without getting emotional.
I'm getting emotional now.
For me, when I hear stories like this, we're going through this right now in America. You're in New York, so New York's a mess right now. I tweeted this 2 hours before you and I went live. I said, is this too extreme of an idea? Any illegal immigrant who commits a crime in America should face 5 times the punishment of someone who is here legally, especially a U.S. citizen, and an automatic death penalty found guilty of rape, murder, or, drug, child trafficking. I have zero tolerance for this when it comes down to somebody taking advantage of a kid or any of it.
We're both immigrants, though, right? So
well,
you
yeah,
immigrated
for sure.
from Iran, and I from Belgium.
I know. Yeah.
So we're both immigrants. So of course,
sure.
the immigrant story is always most immigrants don't want to come here, or if they do, I love the United States. I have had opportunities here that I studied here that I would have never been able to do that in Europe. So I love America. I love the spirit of America. I think that this is the place where things can change, and this can change here. On the other hand, we have to be always so mindful. I would be, there's always 2 sides to the same story, because what on the liberal side is being co-opted is the empathy, is the willingness to be open-minded towards others. I feel that this is being co-opted, just as the toughness on the right is also being co-opted. I know on the right, I've heard a lot of people being, the save the children, save the children. A lot of feeling and a lot of sympathy for the children. But I, as an adult, don't experience necessarily that same empathy, you see. I'm the grown-up child from that experience. And
I think you do. And the reason why
not always.
Well, I don't. I think, and the reason why I say that, is there's a reason why you have tens of millions of views online, because people empathize with you. And your book has got 223 reviews, 5-star. Why is it 5-star? Because there's a community that, not necessarily understands the pain. Most people haven't gone through this, but sympathizes with somebody like you. Seen an innocent child. When I look at your book, I see your face. I see my daughter. I got an 8-year-old girl and a 3-year-old girl. I'm not okay with that. There's a part of me that is naturally, my entire life, I've been very protective since we lived in Germany for 2 years and my mother and my sister were there. I was a 10, 11, 12-year-old. I was ready to do anything if somebody did anything to my mom and my sister when my parents went through a divorce. I understand that.
Was your family connected to the Shah in
No,
Iran?
not at
that's
all.
Not why you left?
No, we were, not my mother's side, but I'm supportive of what the Shah was doing. I think when the regime fell, Iran's been a shit show since 1979. Iran was a beautiful place prior to that. Right now, it's not the people. What the politicians and some of the other people in clergy did messed up that place. Mm-hmm. No, but for me, I think the way you overcome this is, one, by using your voice, calling out, accountability, and moving on. And for liberals,
I've done a lot of that today.
When you're saying liberals, to me, it's a very weird thing what happened with liberals. I think liberals lost themselves. They're a little bit confused. feminists started off with
I'm a feminist.
Well,
though.
I believe you. I can hear it when just listening to you. Feminists started off as wanting to be for women's rights. Great.
But
very
everything
noble.
gets co-opted by those that want to brainwash
But conservatives
the
are
people.
not. Conservatives are not sitting there saying, "Let's have men compete against women, young girls." I mean, that's like the ultimate.
See, but that is how everybody gets co-opted. That is a thought, an idea gets co-opted, and then it gets pushed. And
What does that even mean?
What gets
help me
taken
understand as
and
a
used?
feminist.
So,
Tell me.
not as a feminist, as me, I'll tell you that from a mind control perspective.
Right.
So I was trained to get into the mind of men. And what do you do to get into somebody? You use their fear. You find what it is that scares them.
Okay.
So you use fear, then you got them, and then you insert an idea into their heads. So when I speak about the division is that every issue, what you hear about it is very specific, and it creates more division because most people are not on that end of the spectrum or on that end of the spectrum as it's being presented to us. Most people are somewhere in the middle. And yes, I think there's a lot of confusion because of that mind control. And when I say co-opted is, for example, abortion was co-opted for in the feminist movement. The issue of abortion was co-opted. Now, Hans Harmsen, that German doctor, he was the head of Pro Familia. So he was the head of the Planned Parenthood of Germany. He was friends with Margaret Sanger. And so there's something about abortion where that has become the thing, the biggest issue. It is not. Every woman would know that being a mother is, why we are, being a woman is being a mother, and there's biological facets of that make you more empathic in general and more able to open your heart because we're mothers. And that is, that has to do with the biological, with a biological fact. So to take abortion where, first there's sexualization of everything. That was imposed. I was going to be part of that agenda of sexualizing everything to go towards pedophilia eventually, because I was going to be a girl singing sexy songs, and then I was going to be a woman singing like a little girl. And so that is on purpose. So I was trained that way. And of course, there's a thought behind it that people will think it's okay that a little girl sings like, makes sexual jokes, and that an adult woman sings like a little girl. And everything that is being sexualized, the way that porn has become so incredibly accessible that most children today discover sex through porn. None of that is, I believe, on purpose. That would be very much fit into that agenda that I was going to be a part of when I was a child by these people who really want to control everything. And so when you take abortion, that is a natural side effect of sexualizing everybody. So when you sexualize everybody and you make sex like having a drink, basically, that was the idea. Instead of, a marital commitment, it became this like having a drink and this is what it is today. It's considered that.
Who did that though?
Well, that's what I think is the people that were in this network, that there was an agenda behind where we're going that has to do with this. Like the abortion would be a natural result of it sexualizing everything, and that then the girl has to pay the most, and that abortion then would become a good option, which it never is. So you never hear about how hard it is for the woman. You never hear about how, for example, there is no consent form. Like, there's no consent form signed. You don't know what happens to the fetus. When you go in to have an abortion.
Or pro-life?
I am neither. I refuse to take sides in all of this because I have had an abortion. I was a sex slave. I was promiscuous. I got pregnant. It would have ruined my life. And it would not have been an option to live out the pregnancy and to give up the baby for adoption. It would have not have, it was not on the table. So it is such a difficult choice because you know there's life inside of you.
Are you glad you're alive?
But abortion is such a complex...
Are you glad you're alive?
You know, a lot of survivors of what I've been through would not really say yes to that.
I agree.
And today, by the grace of God, I am here. And I am glad to be alive. I feel that right now, I have freedom that I never would have hoped to have. And I feel purpose to my life.
Yeah. You know, it's a very, and I agree that this is a very, you know.
And that's what I mean by co-opted. These issues arise. It's the same people that create the problem and that create the solution. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean with co-opting. And that is what I mean with the division that has to be so extreme. What we see, it's not as if social media is not controlled. So there too, we get constantly brainwashed. And that's what I say. We have to be very mindful of and careful that we don't start judging people.
Yeah, but you listen, I understand you're saying not judging people. That's what we have justice. That's what we have law and order.
What kind of justice do you mean? Because they
what
were in the network
laws.
Also. The people from... No,
that's
it.
Laws.
The people in the justice system were the head of...
They're for sale, and that's why I said they need to be called out when they're alive, not when they're dead. That's why I asked you, who's the lady's name? You're like, I don't want to do it because she's alive. That's
not why. I told you the reason is because nobody would believe me, and I'm not ready, and it's not fair of you to ask me.
But at this point, I'm not interested. I don't even want you to say it. Even if you said, I'll cut it out, just so you know. For you to know, I'm not trying to close you in telling me. Don't do it on my show. Do it on somebody else's show. If you give me the name right now, I'll cut it.
It's a matter of timing. Everything I do is calculated, right?
Hang on a second. Here's what I want to say to you. If you sit there and think about what is going on, there's nothing like unfair, unfair punishment. So you hear these stories of, guys that went to jail for 20 years for selling a dime bag.
I know. I worked in the prisons.
Why did that guy go to jail for a dime bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or people that went to jail that didn't kill anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else blamed them. And, hey, he's going to go in, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are devastating. You ruined someone's life, their youth. You stole their 20s and their 30s.
That's right.
And they're going to get out in their mid-40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need law and order so the big guy cannot bully the little guy. You need that. Unfortunately, because we have certain lobbyists and because we have certain politicians that are for sale, predominantly on the left, that are for sale.
Well, no, don't say that.
No,
my perpetrators were from both sides.
Yeah, no, but...
Absolutely. No. You cannot say predominantly.
I said
you don't
politicians.
know.
I said politicians. It's cheaper to buy the people on the left than the ones on the right.
You don't know that.
Presidents who become presidents.
No, you don't know that either.
Presidents who become presidents, who funded their own campaign, are tougher to buy than those who were funded 100% by donors, like the Clintons, like the Obamas, like the Carters, like others.
I'm saying that you don't know that.
No, it's very simple because it's just called math.
I have a different perspective, and my perspective
there's
comes
a reason
from
why you have a different
having
perspective.
Been part of.
Well, you can say that,
having
but that
been
doesn't,
in it as a child.
I understand that, but that doesn't make your perspective 100% accurate. On when
I'm
it
saying
comes
you
down
don't
to,
know that.
Also, you don't know that because you're also a little bit too in it. Because as a feminist, you said you're a feminist. It's easy.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to you? Tell me what it means to you.
Well, I have been through a lot of things that I know that would have never happened to me if I was not a woman, not a girl or a woman. So
that means a man will never be able to understand what you're saying. And another woman...
No. No, not at all. That just means that I am absolutely for full equality that doesn't even mean necessarily legally. It just means that I, as a woman, need to be able to speak freely and with everything that means as a woman.
Mm.
That's what it means to me. It doesn't necessarily mean what you are making of it.
Right. And I don't know what that meant, what you just said. But, like for me.
Well, because maybe you don't understand then as a man, but as a woman, there are certain things that I've had to go through. Like, for example, harassment. It was extremely common when I was a young adult.
Sure.
To be harassed. I was harassed everywhere. When I was living in Paris, when I was living in New York, it was just happening all the time.
I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe
For example, that's one of those things.
No, but we're talking two different things. I believe that. I believe the sexualization of women. I fully believe that.
Okay.
I'm not sitting there saying that, but at the same time, the same people that wanted women rights are the same people that are okay with men choosing to compete in women's sports. That's very weird.
Well, of course, and that's not what I'm talking about at all. That has nothing to do with feminism to me.
But unfortunately, that's what a lot of liberals defend nowadays, and that's why they lost the election as catastrophically as they did in America, losing 7 battleground states. It's embarrassing. But I want to do this.
Do you have then also that? Is that everybody, or is that?
No, I don't agree. That's everybody.
Right.
No, I don't agree. That's everybody. But by the way, I think John F. Kennedy. What he wanted to do with America, I think there was a lot of what he wanted to do was noble. And I trusted their family more because they self-funded them running for office. You couldn't necessarily buy them. Anybody on the left or the right that runs for office.
All my icons have been, knocked off their pedestal just from speaking to people that have been through this.
Those are two different things. I totally get it. What's the saying, Rob, when they say, when you meet your hero, what's the word? Don't meet your hero because you will be quite often disappointed, or some phrase like that, because you're going to see they don't walk on water as much as you thought they did. But no, look, I think it is a conversation that needs to be had. I do know it's uncomfortable, and I do know I have a reputation of asking questions that comes to my mind and sometimes makes the meeting a little bit more uncomfortable. And forgive me for being me. I've been like this for 46 years. I don't know any other way.
I saw an interview that you did, and I thought it was much more peaceful.
Yeah, which one was that?
MIA.
MIA?
Mia.
Oh,
the
because
singer.
the conversation was it was that was more about her interesting story that she had on what happened with her. But there was a little bit of tension.
Story.
There was a little bit of tension with her. I don't know if you watched the whole thing. Did you watch the whole thing or no?
I did, yeah. There was a little bit of tension with her interpretation of the Bible.
And not just that, the father of her child, and some of the things we talk about that she was uncomfortable
that
to talk about.
That she asked not to talk about, just like me.
No, at the beginning she was open to it, and then later on she got uncomfortable with it. So
I see.
And just like you, by the way, to be fair, so the audience doesn't think I'm cornering you, you told Tony that you wanted to name names. I didn't
say that at all. He came to ask me if I wanted to. No. Let's be very clear.
Let's bring him in here then, because I'm not releasing this interview.
Yes, he came to ask
Rob,
me if I was willing to name some names.
So then Tony's going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
So let's hold Tony accountable. Tony, if you can come here, buddy. Tony. Come on, Tony. So when you told me you proposed for her to be a guest on the podcast, she said she wanted to name names that she's never named before.
Yeah, I thought we were under the assumption that we were going to discuss when we first spoke early on over a month ago. I had brought this up to you.
I don't remember, but I don't remember saying that I wanted to name names. I would never say that because that's not really what I normally would do. And you brought it up today. I thought you meant today. You went and brought it up.
No, I brought this up early on. I said, are you willing to come on?
But I must not have answered you. I definitely did not tell you I'm going to name names that I've never named before.
Well, here's the point. The reason for it is like Tony has never misled me. So when Tony says something, I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds good, and I don't have a problem with that. But for me, it was I've known your story.
But you're saying I want to come on naming names. That's not exactly what I would have. Would you say that I said I wanted to come on naming names? That's not really how I would say it at all. I was asked. I was considering it. Maybe this came up or not, but
this came up
early on,
spoke,
2 months ago.
I said, we spoke some time back. I said, are you willing to come on?
Yeah.
Are you willing to speak?
So,
well, he asked me right before we came on.
But only reason I want to qualify this, because that's questioning the integrity of the interviewer, which is me. I'm not going to sit here and feel
I'm
like
not doing that.
But hang on. I'm not going to sit here and be cornered as if I'm cornering you. No,
Oh, okay, that's how it felt like.
Then you're going to walk away saying, this guy was just I'm not cornering you. I'm being told, hey, there's a lot of things. And she's at a point right now with everything that's going on with Diddy, Epstein, all this stuff. She feels compelled to want to talk and maybe give some names. I said, great. Let's have
Tony
the conversation.
came to me before coming in here and said, would you be willing to name some names of people that are alive? And I went through the list and I, told him I'm not comfortable naming David Rockefeller. I didn't say who.
He's not
the
alive.
billionaire.
He's dead. He died.
Yes,
in
he is dead.
2017.
And the person who's alive, I'm not comfortable.
Yeah, I totally get it. And that's a different conversation. Let's separate those two.
Okay.
Those two, let's qualify. One is you expressed the interest to want to come here for that reason, to maybe talk about some names.
It's not for that reason at all. I was considering, I did have an intuition that this is correct. This is definitely the biggest podcast I've ever been on, and this is you have a very large reach. I was a little concerned, just because of your political views, frankly. I was a little concerned to come on because I do.
We didn't talk politics until you brought up feminism. I didn't bring up Trump. I didn't ask you about Trump.
I don't think it's a political.
No, but what I'm trying to say to you is this is not. I'm not having a political conversation with you. I'm having a conversation from a father with 4 kids who hears stories like this, and we support a lot of charities behind closed doors that we don't publicly endorse because we don't want people to, there's certain things that we will support and nobody knows about because, I'm involved in this in many directly and many indirectly, but this is a very important issue in my life. And so when these stories come out and I hear names of people that are still out there that are not being held accountable, it upsets me a little bit, especially when there's somebody that can do something about it. I can't. I'm not in it. You are. And I'm all about giving the limelight for somebody to share some of those things with others so people can protect themselves from perpetrators doing it again repeatedly to younger children today, which is not fair. Somebody stole your youth, and I'm not okay with that. And if we can do that to save it from happening to the other 359,000 that FBI has reported in 2022 of children's missing, how are those parents handling things? Imagine the mother and the father not having their kids next to them when they put them to bed, when they put them to sleep, when they hug them, when they kiss them. My 3-year-old daughter this morning was crying for no reason, okay? And her sister got into it. And I went downstairs to check on her. She gave me a hug for 45 seconds. Let me tell you, priceless. Give me all the money in the world. Will not replace that feeling I got skin to skin when I kiss her neck and kiss her cheek. And she's telling me, Daddy, I want to make sure every father and mother who is missing those children, I want more attention to it so someone can do something about it. Whether they're former military, politicians, wealthy people that are willing to give money to it, I want to bring attention to it. This is not an easy topic. This is very uncomfortable. This is why I said at the beginning, it takes courage to talk about it. I give you that respect. So I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy to go through something like this.
And it's not easy to speak about it. And it is also not easy to sort through what seem to be political views. You see, I believe that politics on the whole are there to cause division at this point. So, and I notice how the division has sharpened in the last years. And so that is why...
Who's done that, though? Who's done that? Think about who's done that.
Well,
If you're pretty smart, okay, you've been around, who do you think's done that? Who has the ultimate power?
Well, I would say that the people that I was used by, they wanted to control not just their slaves, but they wanted to control
who?
Everybody.
But how were they able to silence or get their message out there? What tool did they use in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s?
In the 70s, pedophilia was, for example, sold quite a bit. There was a lot that was very, like the Blue Lagoon, for example. That's That's a very inappropriate film, and there's a lot out there. In France, there was a lot. David Hamilton, he did Bilitis. Now, the girls that were filmed by him are coming out saying that he raped them. You see, the 70s, they were really pushing pedophilia, and it feels like at the moment there's a new push again towards pedophilia.
But where I was going with this is they did it by controlling the media.
Yeah.
So who controls the media?
But there's also social media.
Well, social media is
because the
controlled.
tech companies are also controlled, aren't they?
Sure, I know they are, but who are they controlled by? Who? The only guy that owns it that's conservative possibly is a guy named Elon who used to be a Democrat. He left when they realized they're insane. They've lost their minds.
That's one person.
But everybody else is on the other side. So, yeah, I remember, when you're explaining all this stuff, showing these movies, there was a weird song back in the days by this guy named Benny Mardones, which I don't know if you remember this song. She's just 16 years old.
Gosh.
Remember that? I mean, this guy's singing a song about...
you can find compilations of songs now where they're all singing about pedophilia.
I read the lyrics. Here's the lyrics. It says, she's just 16 years old. Leave her alone, they said, separated by fools who don't know what love is yet. But I want you to know, if I could fly, I'd pick you up, I'd take you into the night and show you a love like you've never seen. This is a grown man talking about a 16-year-old. And he was asked in an interview.
Otis Redding.
Sitting on the dock of the, which song?
No, the song, she's weary. And young girls, they do get weary wearing that same old shabby dress. And then the lyrics go, young girl, you won't regret it. He says, you won't regret it.
Yeah. Well, look, we're living in a
weird
world.
Try a little tenderness, yeah. She's waiting. Just anticipating.
At least this guy didn't give the age. This other guy's given the age. She's
young girls. It's young girls.
He's got the audacity
Beatles,
to say
she's
16.
just 17. Do you know what I mean? That's the Beatles.
In some countries, it was 16 back in the days. Like it was even in America right now. I think the legal age in America.
But we're still talking about grown men singing about a 17-year-old. It's always the same story.
No, I'm with you. I understand what you're saying, but as weird as it sounds, look at this. Even in U.S., some states, the age of consent is 17 in New York State, 15 in Arkansas. The national average in U.S. is 16. So some of this stuff is kind of maybe we need to update some of these laws that we have in place. But anyways, Anneka, folks, we're going to put the link to her book, Quest for Love, below for you to be able to buy and support. It's down there. We'll put it in the description and in the chat. Please do support her cause and order her book. And again, I appreciate you for coming down, sitting down and having this conversation.
Thank you.
I am sure, as usual, as much as it felt a little bit uncomfortable at times, I think the audience won today because we brought more attention to this discussion. However they see it, that's up to them. But I think we did more good than bad by having this conversation. Okay. I appreciate you for coming out. And I like the fact that you never talked about Trump because I don't like to talk about Trump.
Okay, good.
I don't like politics. And if you were going to go there, I was going to stop it.
No.
I was not going to be happy about it.
I was not going to talk about it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. This was great. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.